Hello, children and adults alike. Today, our video is going to talk about how certain words or certain prefixes will be associated with different time periods.
Hello, lovely children and adults alike. We are going to first talk about the word classical. So the word classical, when we put that in front of a word, it is in reference to something from the past. So as you can see, this beautiful Camaro Z28 with Firestone tires is in reference to a beautiful vehicle of the past that its purpose was to make loud noises and do burnouts and be really fast and cool and make girls woo and yelp and whatnot. So the idea is classical, from the past.
Hello, beautiful children and adults alike. On this end of the spectrum, we have a brand new 2019 HSV Camaro, decked out in candy apple red with wheels sprinting real fast. And the purpose of it is to go real fast in a very straight line. And pretty much not much else.
So just like you saw a muscle car that was classical, a classical muscle car, versus a new muscle car that very much served the same purpose, to distinguish, we call this one a classic muscle car from a new muscle car so that we don't get confused about the eras. Now, if we take that to a more abstract form, we can look at a Nazi, like Hitler. We would just simply call this guy a Nazi, right? Because if I say Nazi, you think Nazi Germany, 1933 to 1945, bada boom, bada bing. However, if you go over to Brian,
we get what is called a neo-Nazi. That is the new and modern version of a Nazi. And therefore, we add the prefix neo. Okay? The word neo is a Greek word, neos. That means new, fresh, and young. So this, believe it or not, is the new and fresh, young version of old Hitler over there, peeking his head out the window. Just like how this Camaro, this red Camaro, is the neo, the young and fresh version of the classic 69 Camaro over there.
all right, so there is a purpose here. We're going to get to it. So as you know, an old Nazi is different than a new Nazi. An old car is different than a new car. Right? To distinguish, we use different terms, either classical or neo, or we can even say modern. So this word, classical liberalism, is in reference to capitalism or limited government interference in the economy in its classical form. We're talking about early industrial ages. We're talking about the influence of Adam Smith and the invisible hand and all that stuff. And we're talking about the Industrial Revolution, classical liberalism, liberalism in its classic form. What Brian's going to talk about is this idea of classical liberalism in its modern form. What do we call that?
So, with terms like neoconservatism and neoliberals, okay, we can bring those together as modern conservatism. And just like how we have the classical version of the Camaro, the classical version of Nazism, okay, these things serve pretty much the same purpose as classical liberalism, okay? It's just a evolution from the old to the new, but rather than being contextualized in industrialization, we have it contextualized, meaning it grew from things like Reaganomics or Margaret Thatcher. Okay.
All right, we're just going to finish this up. Nail it down, get it in your brains. So here we go. Classical liberalism. So the idea of classical liberalism in its original form, this was the late 1800s to the early 1900s. right? And this was the belief that we are free, people are free, when we have limited government. Right? The economy would be built on individual effort and free market. So the belief in free market. And government shouldn't be involved in the marketplace. This shifted in the 1930s to modern liberalism, which was the belief that people could only be free when government stepped in and intervened, right, and helped people get through hard times. So this was when we introduced social programs, public works programs, higher taxation. Right? Government was very much steering or driving the economy. Now this all changed in the 1970s when we shifted back, like you think about like a pendulum swing, we shifted back to the right, and what brought about what was called, or what is called, modern conservatism. Okay, and so you can think about other words like neoliberalism or neoconservatism being associated with modern conservatism, but essentially we were bringing back some of these original ideas from the past in a new and improved way. So that's the easiest way to think about that. And to make it so it's not confusing, we don't call modern capitalist governments like Ronald Reagan or Margaret Thatcher, we don't call them classical liberals, because that's like saying a classical car. Right? We call them modern conservatives to distinguish them from the past.